So that being said, we're going to start with, I think I have it in the right order for the first person here. Is that Mike still? Mike?
Yeah.
Do you have a question? You want to stand up?
No, I don't have a question. I just thought I would fill it out for information purposes. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Nothing about the budget? All right. That was way too easy. Make it easy. I think the next one I have here is Carolyn Gow. Is that correct?
No, it's Gore.
Am I saying it wrong?
Yeah, it's Gore, but it's spelled the correct way.
How do you spell the last name?
G-O-H-R.
Okay, no problem. Carolyn, what's your question?
I'm very concerned about us supporting two different school systems, what they call
Can you be
choice.
a little louder? You want to come up?
Oh, no, I'm okay. I'm very concerned about Wisconsin supporting two different school systems. We've got the public school and we've got the choice school. As it was implemented, and I'm really concerned about the funding of private schools, not the little Catholic church down the street, but the corporate funding of those schools. It is actually bringing our public schools down, and I'm of the belief that that's the intent. Right now, the maximum, they kind of have a grade going on. 1% of every school district is allowed to have a choice school, go to that. Now, in 2025, I think it is, they eliminated it. Anyone can go. And frankly, 70% of the kids that choose these vouchers are already and have been attending private schools. So it's really a welfare system for people who can afford it, quite frankly. And it's bringing down the ability and funding for our public schools. I went to school here, was very happy to be there. My kids have gone through the school system in Menomonee Falls area. Very happy with it. And I don't like what I see with the secondary school system that we taxpayers have to support. It's causing our school districts to come out with referendums to build this or that. So I'd like you to end that, if I could. Support our public schools. You can laugh, but that's actually where I'm at. I'd like you to support ourselves. Public schools, in terms of funding. Thank you.
Okay, so your question is that you would like to see the end of the voucher program?
I would, especially for the private schools that are corporate backed.
So the voucher schools in the state of Wisconsin are based on financial need. So you cannot get a voucher unless
You would think that. You would think that, and yet 70%.
Well, this is what I said, I allowed you to speak and I'm.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump
So
in.
we can pull that statute for you if you'd like to. It is based on financial need. And so that is why it was put in place. It also has to deal with the fact that we do have failing schools, and MPS is very few of the numbers are positive. As a matter of fact, we have some school districts with math and reading rates, unfortunately, very, very low, like 1%, 2%, 3%. And I think the point of having the voucher program allowed families that were in failing schools to be able to go to a school that would allow them to give their kid a real education or a better education. So the voucher program was actually put in place by not only the city of Milwaukee, but Tommy Thompson and Bill Phelps, I think, was a big part of it as well, because they were concerned about some of their schools not being able to meet the minimum standards. So the funding source is dramatically less. I'm just going to ballpark, so if you want to quote me, I could be slightly wrong. I think for Menomonee Falls, the funding from the state of Wisconsin is almost close to $15,000, and then for choice schools, it's $10,000, and then for the lower grades, it's $9,000, and then that same number for the choice program, and I think it's still $16,000, almost $16,000 for Menomonee Falls. And the reason because I know Sussex Hamilton is like $1,000 less, but they have more students. So I'm trying to do this by memory.
Right.
So the reason that the choice is not necessarily to put anybody out of business, I think the opposite. If your child was in a public school that was doing so poorly, the point of the voucher was it gave them an opportunity to go someplace else, and it's financially needs-based. So, you know, well, I'm just telling you that that is by statute and that's the way it's.
Can I add a comment?
So, does that answer your question?
Not really, 'cause can I add a comment? It's changed over the years. Initially, it was a Milwaukee area deal. Incorporating, you know, Racine and stuff like that, but at the same time, you're taking money away from a public school. I just recently learned that a child who attends these choice schools and gets kicked out in, say, September, October, can go to public school. They can't prevent them from going, but that annual money still stays in that choice school, which makes absolutely zero sense. We're defunding our public schools. And to say that, oh, it's okay to defund them and then to blame them for failing doesn't make sense to me.
So I will tell you again that there is a big financial disparity between the amount of money that the state pays to a choice school and to a public school, and then also that it's not just Milwaukee. I mean, Madison has this issue. You run the state, some schools are definitely struggling, so we're not going to go back and forth. This is going to be, because I want everybody else to have a chance to speak.
But rural districts are really suffering. You know, they're suffering a lot. More, you know, and that's being ignored.
I'm talking about the 22nd and the school districts.
Well, Milwaukee isn't in the 22nd, Madison isn't. So I'm just.
No, but I'm saying that there are other districts that have failing schools
Sure.
as well, was my point. And then giving children the opportunity to go to a school that's doing better and allowing their kids to be able, because I think what we both would agree with, a child that can't read or write or can't do simple math, it's a death sentence as far as them being able to move forward. And at the end of the day, whatever money is put into these schools, we want to make sure that they're actually getting the opportunity to learn.
That's
So I'm going to call quits there, and we're going to move on to the next person, and that would be Paul Larson.
Thank you.
Sure.
Right here, I was wondering if you had heard about Governor Walker's proposal to get rid of Wisconsin income.
You mean Governor Evers?
No, I mean Governor Walker. I mean, he has an idea, I heard a radio or TV somewhere, I know he's not governor now, but he has an idea about getting rid of our income tax, like Tennessee, Texas, Florida. Have you heard about that idea?
Yeah, the conversation, Wisconsin has one of the higher income taxes, and I think we've heard from people that are leaving the state because of it, right? Mm-hmm. They are snowbirds and they spend their 161 or 181 days in Florida, so they don't have to pay the taxes, and then they come home to their families in the summer, right?
Yeah.
We're certainly knocking on doors. I talk to people about that. I know that that's certainly been appealing, and that's been a lot of Florida's growth and other states' growth. I think we would like to just wave a wand and make that happen, but it does require us then to make some balancing. It's a big hole to cover, and while we do have a surplus, I think the conversation has been, is this the year that we parlay some of that money into creating either a very low tax and to get to a no tax situation for the state of Wisconsin. So it's certainly being bandied about, but we also have to have, we can't not have the income that, so your answer is yes. And I think we're trying to make that happen, but as you can imagine, it does require shifting a whole lot of things. Does that mean that we're gonna have higher sales tax now, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean that you go to Illinois, they have 11, 12, 13%, I mean, they have a higher sales tax. Now they still have a lot of high taxes, period. But then what kind of shifts would taxpayers be willing to make to get rid of that tax?
Listening to Governor Walker's plan, kind of addressed all this stuff, and it was very minimal. In fact, it was like a win-win-win-win. It wasn't that much of an increase in that, and we would keep people like my sister-in-law, brother-in-law, moved to Tennessee. They're not paying taxes anymore because we would be a bank. We would be drawing people in. Our income probably would go up if we got rid of the income tax because of the draw that we got in other states. So I would just encourage you to consider that, think about it. If that doesn't work, I've got one other idea that I would suggest to you. My son works in the Department of Revenue, Wisconsin. We have thousands and thousands of pages of tax.
We were
law.
actually just there 2 days ago, so yes.
One way we could get rid of all of that Wisconsin tax law is just get rid of every Wisconsin income tax law and take the 1040 taxable income on the federal form and just, like, say, reduce it by $10,000 per person. Say I've got $40,000, I pay $10,000 for me, $10,000 for my wife, $40,000 left. Multiply that by 3.5, that's my income tax for Wisconsin. Get rid of all of the Wisconsin tax laws, everything. We're reinventing the wheel. The federal government always figures out our income. Why not just use that? It's pretty close to us. There's a few little differences, but we could get rid of 90% of that bureaucracy and thousands of pages of tax law. Just use the tax reform federal form by 3.5%. You're done.
I think that's a great idea. I think that's almost like a one-form taxes for the state of Wisconsin. I don't know how that would do for some folks that have deductions that take them or don't take them.
There's a lot of stuff. It's not exactly the same, but you can deduct on federal too. You just use what the federal has established, and you think of the hundreds of millions we save in bureaucrats that we're paying now, that we could get rid of other times. We could get rid of an entire bureaucracy of the state of Wisconsin.
Well, we do have to say, like I said, we were there just 2 days ago, and I don't think we're surprised. The number of people who are filing online is almost 90%. We look at 92% of people file online. The other big issue that they're having is people stealing identities and trying to steal their tax refunds. And one of the things they're suggesting that people do is to give a 4-digit PIN to your tax identification, so that way it makes it a little bit harder and gives you an additional set of protection, which makes a lot of sense. You have to have a PIN number that someone can't steal your refund or mess with your taxes. So I think simplification of the tax code would be wonderful for the state of Wisconsin. We have not talked about that in a long time, so I appreciate your comments. That being done, okay, add in Yvonne Dillon.
Yes. I think my question was mostly answered by this gentleman here. The question that I had originally was, it's a blessing to have a $7 billion surplus. And does the legislature have a program that would objectively focus on the areas that we need to focus on, and that we can have agreement on while we're spending time over here and other areas that we can get agreement on? What is the process that the legislature will be using to make sure some of our money is spent appropriately?
So when we do the budget, it's a 2-year cycle. So this is, so the last budget will finish roughly July of this year, will be the beginning of the new budget. It's a 2-year cycle that goes through. So when we talk about numbers, remember cut them in half, because that's over 2 years, not 1 year, you see some numbers. So the process is right now, we are hearing from all the different agencies, we're having listening sessions, we're having these conversations so that we can make a plan. The governor put a budget out, and I feel it was a little bit disingenuous because not only did it spend all of that money, but it also spent another $1 billion that would put us in the red. And unlike the federal government, we cannot print money. So one of our jobs is to provide you with a budget that's fiscally responsible, that will fit the requirements of making sure we don't spend more than we have, because we do not have money trees in the state of Wisconsin. We have to fit within the budget. And so also, it's not just about, as you had heard from the show, about spending it today. It's about parlaying it into something that we won't have to come up with additional monies going forward. So if we put money, an additional $10 million into transportation, I'm just saying, are we going to then have to provide another $10 million into transportation every year going forward? So it's always planning we have a long-term plan for capital projects, and then we have the regular spending that occurs not only in the districts for education, for universities, for the municipalities. The municipalities are feeling that they should get a larger share, that they've been in a freeze for a while. So there's a lot of moving parts to it.
Yeah.
And I think we try to hear from a lot of people and put together a good budget. If we could not come to a consensus on a budget, the budget would turn into the budget from last year, and it would go on until we approve a new budget. So there's always a continuum. I do want to let you know that we are one of the very few states that has a fully funded pension. Unlike Illinois and some of these other states, we have tried to be, as responsible as you can, but there are not additional dollars needed to pay down some of these long-term debts to the state of Wisconsin.
Okay. Just a part two, and it might not be an appropriate question for you, considering all of this is happening right now. But one of the things that is concerning a lot of our constituents is the Superfund site that Waste Management is working on now, digging, even without, we thought, the proper approvals process. And it might turn out to be something that taxpayers have to help with that burden. Have you heard about the Superfund site? What are your thoughts about what's going on there?
We've had some general conversations, and I guess if you want to have a more thorough conversation with the office about the details, but from what I've heard at this point, if you have additional information, we would be glad to take an email from you and we could go into more specifics. Okay, perfect, thank you. Any costs? I think I'm trying to keep them over.
Thanks for coming to the I'm a nurse. I have spent the early part of my career in public health, and specifically the first 5 years of my career were on the Menomonee nation, where drinking water is very hard to come by. And so I'm urging you to support everything that Governor Evers is asking for in terms of water. Protecting our drinking water from PFAS, lowering the lead levels. We were talking earlier about education. Little kids who have lead are never going to be able to do the math and the science and the language learning. In regards to what Ivan was saying about the Superfund site, I mean, water is essential to life, right? So if we don't have good, pure, clean drinking water here in the Falls and throughout the 22nd district, there's no life, there's no property value, there's nothing. So we gotta keep an eye on that Superfund site, and we gotta protect our water.
Has there, forgive me, has there been a report that says there's been a problem with leaking into the aquifers?
Not yet.
Okay.
I mean, if everything goes well, no, there won't be.
But they wanted a waiver
There's
for
still
licensing.
Well, I don't want to comment on something like that, but I'm not aware of any aquifer issues, and I do say I think the waste management has been, I think they've been professional. I don't know what. Okay, all right. Well, then I'm also.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's not much more.
Okay.
Please support everything that we're
I think we're still trying to figure out the long-term effects of PFAS. We're trying to affect where. I know further up, the tip of Wisconsin, Bayville. We're still trying to, it's new on the radar, so, I think we'll all probably learn about it as we go forward. Rose, Rose.
I have just 3 quick, I hope quick things. And most of them have to do with our local taxes and agencies and government here in Menomonee Falls. And the one thing in terms of our village board budget, and we hear all over the state how municipalities and cities are not getting enough revenue back from the state. But I realize that's also connected to what taxes we pay in. prided itself, when we all get our tax bills and we say, oh, good, our taxes.
So, I'm not, the village board here, the members that are here, that isn't something you need to take up with them. Okay,
What I would like you to do,
okay,
as the representative for this community, would be to work with our village board or to encourage them that they are not getting the revenue from the state they need because they're holding our taxes at zero. And I looked at my previous tax bills, and like I say, we all say, oh, great, isn't that wonderful? But we can't provide services, that money doesn't just come out of the ground somewhere. It comes from our taxes. So I'm not anywhere once with my taxes anymore than the next person. But I have listened to our village board members say, oh, we gotta fix our streets, and we gotta take money away from our library, and we can't do this, and we can't do that. Well, of course you can't. Not if you don't raise the taxes and with inflation. So, in terms of what you can do, I know you don't have anything in terms of revenue.
well, I think that was one of the questions that we heard from municipalities. So the point of the freeze was that we have the highest tax. We moved down, we were one of the highest taxes, and if a municipality or a school district wants to raise revenues, they have to go to you. And that is the point of them having a referendum. So then the people have the ability to vote. So they still have the power. We have a lot of new revenue in Menomonee Farms. We have a lot of new homes. And so that's certainly much more than other communities. Butler and some of the other ones are landlocked. So there's a lot of new revenue coming from them. So as you're looking, we've heard from the municipalities, but you'll need to talk to your village members if you want them to raise your
Well,
taxes.
that's the future. I think we will have better luck with them than we do. But my second one is also in regard to school finance. And as you probably know, I worked in schools for 30 years. I was on our bargaining team. I struggled with all those budget issues and negotiating contracts and there. And in terms of the voucher schools and private schools, came about, like you said, Bill Phillips and,
Senator Thompson.
what's his name, the superintendent, Howard Fuller, and back then it was, yes, it was a good idea for children who didn't have work orders and have choices. Over time, like Carolyn said, that has taken a very different turn. And there's a difference between the charter schools and the voucher schools. And whereas charter schools are still part of the state school system. And so, but once you get into the voucher schools, the rules aren't the same, the money isn't the same. And I know I worked in we got categorical aids from the state. The state never, ever, in all the years I worked, fulfilled its obligation as to the percentage that they were supposed to reimburse the local school districts for, nor did the federal government. So our school districts, fortunately, they're good districts and they want to do the right things and they hire the right people. But they're getting clobbered by that. And when Act 10 first came around, it was like, oh man, this is really going to save us. Well, it did for the first couple, 2-3 years. I have some good friends who are administrators, they were pretty thrilled because all of a sudden we couldn't negotiate our contracts. And we tried to say over and over and over again, you're going to run into trouble down the road because teachers aren't going to want to stay here, the prices aren't going to keep in line, etc. So I totally agree that the voucher system in schools needs a lot of work and a lot of looking into. And so I would encourage, charter schools, like I say, are doing that thing. And what initially was for children who have showed a need, a financial need, but that is no longer.
That is not, I would repeat that is how it is based for you to be able to get into the schools. And so if you have specific instances, we would always like to have a conversation, but I'm letting you know that is how the charter program is. Okay, and do you have a third question? Or,
No, I said no.
okay. All right, Amanda. Amanda?
Hi, thank you.
Sure.
I am a teacher. I don't teach in this community. I live in this community. I wish I wanted to teach in this community.
Okay.
I am very concerned about school funding in general. You mentioned that Wisconsin does have surplus, and it's also a test sentence if kids have the ability to do basic math and reading, which I agree with. I'm a reading specialist. I'm wondering what have you been advocating for in terms of the budget? Like, so I know that the proposal was $450 in the first year and $750 in the second, correct?
No, what was that from the governor?
Yeah, I think that was what was proposed from.
I think it might have been higher than that. Can I ask where you teach?
I teach in Greenville.
Okay.
Well, my kids go to school here.
Yeah. I'm not sure the amount off the top of my head, but go ahead. Could you?
So do you support an increase by $1,000 to $1,500
Per student.
per pupil in the next?
I don't think we have that kind of money. No, I do not. I would not be able to I don't think we can financially do that. I mean, and don't forget, you still have the ESSER funds, so.
We don't have the ESSER funds anymore.
Yeah, we do, look at 2024. We can look up your district. So Menomonee Falls has 1.5 million left in their ESSER funds. I don't know your district, but
I mean, I'm concerned about Menomonee Falls.
Yeah, Menomonee Falls, I just
The reason
put up-
why I don't want to work here is because I know that my salary is going to keep increasing in my district. I know that teachers here are not getting that. And I would love to cut my commute down by 30 minutes and teach in the community that I live in. Like, I want that. But, like, are you in support of increasing school funding?
I think we have increased school funding every year since the 8 years that I've served. That has increased every single year. So what happened last year was for 2 terms, the ESSER funds came, basically it was kind of a stopgap from the federal government on additional funds to schools because of COVID. And so I just put a letter out to Menomonee Falls because they do have 1.5 million left in their ESSER funds. And I asked them how they plan to use that. So there was not a per pupil, just so we're talking, there was not a per pupil increase because ESSER funds were those federal funds were used to offset that increase.
So that's obviously a one-time, here's money, it's not added to the base budget. And
No, absolutely not. I understand that.
Inflation is obviously at an all-time high. Wisconsin, from 2002 to 2020, has moved down to the 48th state in the nation in terms of increase for school funding.
Well, I'm going to disagree. I don't want to, so you have further questions or? Okay.
My concern is just making sure that in a state where we do have a surplus, which is great, and I'm not saying to spend beyond that, I'm just saying in the realm of priorities, I would really want to prioritize funding our schools and add increases there because all the inflation is impacting every single aspect of running schools, and I am very concerned that our kids can't do basic math and reading. I work in a high school, that's still a concern. So, yeah, I just have to be really prioritize school funding.
Sure. So, like I said, the ESSER funds actually go through, I think, 2026. So it allows districts to, well, we can pull it. So it does allow it to go over multiple years, that it has to be spent. So it didn't have to be spent all in the first year. There is some money left at Sussex Hamilton, there is money left in Menomonee Falls. They may have already earmarked it. That's why I asked how they're planning on going into this year's budget. Is there something big that they plan to do with it? The only problem with the ESSER funds is because it came from the federal government, there was some real disparity on it. So Milwaukee Public Schools almost got, without being included, almost $15,000 a student. And unfortunately, schools in Menomonee Falls only got about $800, and I'm qualifying that. And that's because the federal government makes decisions based on poverty. And so, there's real disparity, and unfortunately, we're state legislators. I have no power over the federal government, how that money was divvied up. And it was not equitable, and I feel terrible about it, but that is unfortunate, that came from the federal government. So increases in the budget, the large issue in the budget every year, hands down, is K-12. Number one, we spend the most money on it. I should have the quote on that, on what exactly it is out of our almost $90 billion, but it is the largest. The second largest is the university programs, and that's about half of what we spend on K-12. So education, I want to say it's almost close to 50% of our budget, but I don't want to.
So I guess I just want to know, you being a representative, do you think that that is appropriately prioritized? Do you prioritize public education highly in the budget, or is that something you're hoping is going to be scaled
When we're
back?
spending almost the largest part of the budget is always in K-12 in the state of Wisconsin. I think that's clear that we're trying to make it. It is the largest revenue, is the largest amount of money spent goes to K-12. The second is the university. That's not roads, that's not municipalities, it goes to schools. So we clearly are committed to it. And I don't know what report you're saying that we're, you know,
It was from our financial director.
Yeah.
I can look at the.
'Cause I'll tell you-
U.S. Census Bureau.
Sure. So I mean, I'm just saying, I've seen that report, I've had that from other teachers as well. And I don't, depending on how you want to do the math, if you're not going to include the per pupil, because we do have different categories for how we fund based on financial need, based on poverty. So it's not just one number. If you don't include the other categories that go with it, that's not necessarily a fair estimation to the process. So yes, I do believe there'll be an increase. The question is how much, and we also have to keep in mind that this $8 billion surplus is really not $8 billion, it's really closer to 4. And we're going to have, everybody's going to have an increase. It's not a one-time thing. So let's be careful on how we spend it, right? Because if I increase at 1,000 and 1,500, if I don't provide 1,000 and 1,500 the next biennium, then it's going to be the fiscal cliff, right? Then that's the next conversation that I have not added additional monies into it. So it's a balancing game, right? Of trying to make sure that we're funding everything else. So I appreciate that. And thank you for teaching. Yeah. James McBride.
She's got a point there.
Oh,
The ESSER funds, the deadline to commit round 3 is September 2024.
But there's, okay, we'll stand corrected. You could look up I thought they had a little longer deadline on it. Is that you saying that's round 3?
Round 3.
Okay. Still 2 more years. Okay.
I think it's a bonus check
I
rather
don't like
than
that.
for school rather than a basis in management structure. Because I'm like, we're going down to 3 after.
Well, we won't wait for the answer to this one. Yeah, I mean, that's just. I'm sorry, Mr. McBride, I apologize. James McBride, I apologize.
all right, I'm on later though.
Yeah.
Okay, here to help. I was on the phone with a lady from the Department of Justice yesterday.
Okay.
She said, oh, well, she said, we'll have somebody call you back. And I said, oh, is that versus the person that said that last week that they were going to call me back? I got some questions I'd like to ask, and I want some answers. Okay? But this goes back to the kind of I don't know if you got people working up there or not, but answers, especially like during the unemployment issue, are nice. Okay? And what you get, you instantly go back and say, is anybody working up there? Are they just hanging up the phone again? And then on WTMJ, they made some snide comment about unemployment and what a mess all that is. So, when I was talking to the lady at the Department of Justice, I kind of went, these people know me, I kind of went off on a little tirade, okay? It seems to me that so many of the things that we're counting on for our government, just little things. For instance, I bet you half the people here have cars with their license plates falling apart. Okay, now did anybody go back to the vendor that sold that material to us and have him fix it? I drove a school bus for 13 years. The last fleet we were working on, you couldn't see any of the numbers on the license plates. And still, the state patrol checks on them and they say, well, everything's cool, you've got license plates. But they don't, okay, because they're falling apart. Now, I have had what you call a vanity license plate, the same license plate since 1993, okay? I sold the company, the car was leased, and when the company's lease came up, a young guy came to the house and said, here's your plate tag. Now, I have had one license plate since 1993. The same plate, except it got changed once. Why am I paying you guys $15 or $20 a year for my vanity license plate that says 2nd Field Force, Vietnam? That's vanity? I don't think that's vanity. I think that's military, okay? This isn't Jimmy the cool guy on that license plate. So why do we only get one license plate every 30 or 40 years? How does that work? Don't I get anything for that extra 20 bucks? It's, you know, I mean, people bend them, it looks like crap. So I think somebody needs to go into that license department and say, look, you gotta do a better job, because every time anybody drives down the street, everybody in this room from now on is gonna see a license plate and gonna say, well, that's what that guy's talking about. They're all over the place, okay? Now, I used to work at unemployment, and I know a little bit about how it used to operate. And I also know that back when Doyle was the governor, he canceled the unemployment computer upgrade. Rightly so. I mean, it wasn't going anywhere, and we didn't have any real need for it, so hell with it. Okay, now we just went through that crisis again, and as I understand it, because I was following it, the state of Wisconsin just had a complete meltdown. Some of the states in the country, very few, 1 or 2 of them, had developed programs that were working. And here we are, I was writing, I may even review. Why don't we go to them and buy their program? Why don't we go out and give them $10 million for that program? No, we decided what we're going to do is rewrite our own for $42 or $50 million. Why can't we just go buy one that works and put it in place, and this won't happen again? Okay? I bet that makes sense. That's, but we don't get to spend $42 million. All right, one last thing. Most of us, I would say categorically in this room, have spent some time up in northern Wisconsin. Somehow, okay? You go past Fond du Lac, you go past, let's say, you go past Appleton. Sometimes your radio goes out, sometimes your Bluetooth goes out, sometimes you can't get your phone to work because you're in the middle of that. Why can't the state of Wisconsin decide we're going to have high-speed internet in northern Wisconsin? How the hell do you expect people to run a company up there and expand the growth of the place? We can't even get wiring done up there. I mean, these are little things, but they're everyday aggravations. Okay, you can talk all you want about, you know, choice schools and all that. That's just talk. When people can't use their phones, when people can't do some of the things that they have to do every day to run their business. I mean, this is, some of this stuff is really a no-brainer. We don't need to buy our own unemployment program. And we do need license plates.
So do I get to respond at all?
I've been waiting for a response from you.
So the license plates, you are not the first person to bring that up. That is, it's a shame. We do have some of the license plates being made in prisons, so that might be part of it, but I don't want to, we have been looking into why it has not been working properly. You're right. Believe it or not, though, the license plate readers that the officers do have, they still get told into the bank, and hopefully there's enough letters on it that they can still read it. that they, I haven't had complaints from the officers yet, but you're right, it is ridiculous. And,
It's a shame she's
and
getting paid.
that is one of the fees, you know, that we use to offset the roads. And the commitment to the roads is license plate fees, new car fees. I mean, they've gone up. If you go to some of the states out east and out west, they pay out the value of your car. So you could be paying $2,000 or $3,000 car tax every year because it's based on the value of your car. Not
That
a
guy
license
with
plate
Tennessee,
fee or
if you don't like
new car
living
fee
here,
at
go
some
to
of those
Tennessee.
states. So, you know, Wisconsin roads are always a tough battle because of the elements. So that's what that money goes towards.
Let me counter that,
Okay.
okay? When I was driving.
I'm not countering you, I'm
No,
just.
no, I'm just saying, let me
Okay.
tell you about people trying to see light today. One of the things that bus drivers do is they write down people that are violating and taking the kids and putting them in danger. Okay, they're going through the red lights and all that other stuff. You can't write down any license plate.
It's a hazard for any good drivers. So you're right. I mean, unfortunately, I don't run that department. That is the administration, but we have been trying to get to the bottom of it. You're not the first person that we've heard that from, and I understand your frustration. The unemployment program, I'll tell you both Mel and we spent every day, weekends. I mean, they were some of the hardest months, the hardest year I've ever, I mean, people crying, losing their businesses, losing, not knowing if they were going to be able to make their payments on their house. We actually had one woman in Menomonee Falls here, almost $70,000. They had to go through their entire life savings before we were able to get their unemployment. And I went to the governor's office every day and begged them to pay that bill. And at that point, Senator Darwin helped them as well. They had gone through all of their money. We had cancer patients that weren't able to pay them. It was the worst. I never want to have to go through that. It was awful. It was every day. It was terrible phone calls. And you were right. It should have been able to have been done, but I have an administration that, you know, that they could have done better. They fired their director. Why use a program that works, but transferring all that data, it's not as easy as $10 million. Each of these agencies likes to be their own silo, right? They like to be the ones that they'll be in charge of their own data, and they'll be the only ones that have that information in an age of technology when the Department of Transportation, the Department of Corrections, and Department of Health all depend on each other. I need you to be able to work together, right? And have somewhat of a working program. It's not just one agency, all these agencies. If it's food share, if it's rent assistance, all these things work together. So I'll tell you, it was awful.
Yeah, but nobody has a voice in this case. These weren't just the working poor. These were guys.
All of us.
It was everybody.
That's right.
And firing some guy that had no ability to run the thing anyway because the thing had been built in the 60s. What, do they use an old Wang computer or something like that? So my point is, I hope you're not just building another program and we haven't got that thing ironed out.
I hear you. And then, high-speed internet, that has been a priority for the state. We've all, Republicans here, everybody agrees that we want to be able to have, how can you run your business if you don't have access? I agree.
I didn't get that.
But unfortunately, because of the beautiful rolling landscape of Wisconsin, this district also includes part of Erin, there are parts that it's a lot of money, to be able to bring internet to that area. They're off of the satellite, our TV channel. So we're trying to be cost effective and not just bring, trying to get as many people out as possible. We have all kinds of dealers trying to bring internet around the state. We understand the value for the kids on the schools, right? Yeah. To be able that they can open their laptops and be able to access the world. So it's been a struggle. We've put a lot of money into it. I still think it's something we're going to have to work with because in rural areas, it's just expensive and harder to get to land and stone versus, the sandy soil that we have in Woodcote. I mean, it all depends on, a lot of the geography is a big part of the expense.
One last thing,
Okay.
okay? I mean, I didn't mean to.
No, I just want to,
But
we're
here's
trying.
one last thing,
Okay.
all right? Now you got AT&T, we just switched because we couldn't get, it didn't work at our cottage. Okay, finally after all the years, they said the heck with it. And no more than got rid of that, AT&T went to somebody else, who frankly isn't any better, but went to somebody else. And just about the same time, AT&T is flooding the network about, I believe it's microfiber, is that what the term is? How they're gonna rewire all of Milwaukee now and get them all big, more high-speed stuff here in Milwaukee. Somebody should step in and say, no, you're not.
I want to let you know, we are making a priority for the areas that don't have it first.
Right, that's like.
But the next problem of that is, what is considered a minimum threshold of what's user, right? So we're trying, we understand the value, right? How can you sell milk or some of the beautiful farm products we have if you don't have access? So it's an ongoing process. I appreciate it. All right, that was a long one.
Yeah.
Let's see, Donna.
I'm not Mike. I've lived in Menomonee Falls for 30 years. I've been in Washington County for 45 years. And I've been in Wisconsin all my life. I pay taxes over $250 million in that kind of year. So I know what's going on. I sympathize with the problem. Talk to you later. I have a friend that lives up in Menomonee. Beautiful internet service. I'll let you know who is carrying.
He's my guy.
Okay?
You'll
It has been at least 20 years. I also have microfiber service in my house in Menomonee Falls. I've had it for 30 years. It costs me $40 a month. It works perfect. Why I have it in Menomonee Falls and you don't, I don't know why. Because AT&T put it in when I first bought the property 30 years ago. I got two issues I'd like to talk about. One is simple, is that's like to ask a question. I watch the news every evening and I see these guys getting picked up for driving without a license. Most of them come from Milwaukee. I understand they don't teach driver ed in Milwaukee schools anymore, is that correct?
Most schools, it's a private purchase now.
What is a private purchase?
That means you have to go to, it's not taught, some schools might have it, but you have to purchase.
I suppose there's some kind of cause of you let it roll the streets and kill everybody. I mean, last night, there was 2 more out of Milwaukee. Somebody driving without a license. 2 of them showed up in court, Milwaukee shot the day before. I talked to my friend, my neighbor, Amy, the judge. They live out on the street, getting parole. Come on. Teach the damn kids. You can afford to teach them mathematics, you can teach them how to drive a car too.
So I don't fund that, that would be a question for your school board. And I think that, I'm sure that you can email your school board.
Fund that anymore?
I don't think, some might, I don't want to speak for all of them.
It's private.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to do private. Most of them have dropped them.
You don't get all these untrained drivers that I on the streets, right through the city of Waukesha last Saturday night. My grand complaint is the one brewers. I understand they're passing the state of the Senate and the funding. $250 million.
Depends on who's asking it.
All those people that live here in Waukesha County, they don't enjoy the stadium, I don't want to pay for it. I'm on record, okay? Don't pay for the brewers. And I'm sick and tired of saying, if you don't pay us this $250 million, we're going to move someplace else. That's what the Brewers did years ago. We put names and they moved, or not the Brewers, the Braves. So they moved to Atlanta, the Atlanta did the pay. You're holding us hostage and say, you paid or we're going to leave town. I'm sick and tired of hearing that.
I agree. Bill and Bob.
What does it mean about, Robin, you spoke? I didn't speak to you, did I?
No. You know, my concern is we just voted in Supreme Court Justice Janet, and I've been hearing rumors that the Senate is now
getting ready to launch to impeach her. What are your thoughts on that and what's happening with that?
I'm kind of having a hard time hearing you. I just lost the.
Oh, well, we just voted in a new Supreme Court
Yeah.
Justice, Janet. Worked very hard with that. And I'm hearing that our new senator wants to impeach her.
I don't have any power with the Senate, I'm in the Assembly.
Right.
So if you want to reach out, haven't had any conversations, that's the Senate. So if you want to reach out to your senator, feel free to, I'm not going to answer for anybody. Yeah. And that would only come out of the Senate, that would, because they have 2/3 majority. Okay. That was really easy, that was an easy one, okay. Patty Mitchell?
I wish I had Jim's voice because it really carries.
You mind coming up a little closer?
I live in Sussex, so I couldn't make the listening session in Sussex. I thought I'd come tonight. Sussex was redistricted, so you're out of the second.
I used to have, the district used to have half of it, and now it's the whole thing.
At least in my area.
Okay.
Do you normally have listening sessions for the constituents?
Congressman Sensenbrenner used to be nice enough to include, so we had the federal and the state together, and then sometimes the locals. Congressman Fitzgerald hasn't done it. We've tried to, but during COVID, we really didn't have it.
I hope you'll continue, because I think it's really important.
It is, so that's what she has,
Do it outside,
I
there's
know
ways.
people in Wisconsin want a lot of different things. I'm a former educator as well as Rose, and so my primary concern is education. And I know people can throw around a lot of statistics, but the one that I found was that Wisconsin has fallen from 11th in per pupil spending in 2002 to 25th in 2020. And we also have the biggest discrepancy in achievement between black students and white students in the whole country. And I've read that some people are advocating more testing and then maybe individualized plans. But after having worked in the school, I know that if you're going to propose a program like that, you have to fund it. And I think Carolyn's comment about voucher schools is that we've also heard that there's a sentiment about expanding the voucher program. And that would drain money away from public schools. I just don't think Wisconsin can afford to pay for 2 different school systems. And if we can change the revenue limits, special ed funding in particular, I think right now special ed is only reimbursed 30%. And I think the governor is advocating increasing that to 60%. There's also a big discrepancy between what districts get per pupil. I saw that Waterford, this may be a couple years old, was getting like $4,117 per student.
I can tell you they don't get that.
Whereas in Italy, it's 11,000. It's like, it shouldn't be so, it shouldn't vary so much. If schools are going to meet the mental health needs, provide driver's ed. I talk to a lot of people who don't want to pay more taxes. And they say, I don't have kids in school, so I don't want to be paying for those schools. But what we have to understand is it's not just about educating our kids or our grandkids, it's educating the citizenry. And those kids are the ones who are going to be paying for our Social Security. So we have a vested interest, not only for safety, right, but for the future of our society. One last comment. I really appreciate that you set the ground rules about showing respect and civility. I attended a forum recently out at the Ingleside for election integrity, and it was actually scary, the amount of disrespect that was shown by some of the people there to other people. And I just want you to know that we're all your constituents, regardless of whether we vote Republican or Democrat. We all deserve basic respect and civility. And that's what I'm hoping that you'll continue to do. And I look forward to seeing you at future business sessions so we can have more dialogue.
Sure. So can I answer a couple of your questions here?
Sure.
So the school funding formula is like something out of is crazy, right? I mean, for all of us that are kind of aware of it, still have to stop ourselves every now and then and go, oh wait, it's Tuesday, so that doesn't apply, right? So the school funding, when whatever the schools were at that time and point, if they were like a low spending school, then all the increases they got only went on top of the fact that they were a low spending school. But I also want to point out that it is based on the population of the students. So if you have a decrease in students in the state, you will have a decrease in funding because it is based on students. And so sometimes some schools will say, oh, well, what is your student? Has it gone up? Does your enrollment go down? I mean, that is a big part of why your funding has changed. There is federal guidelines that are beyond, the state's control for poverty and what's determined as poverty, and that additional funds go for that. And so please keep in mind when you're pulling some of these statistics, it's based on population of students, and it's based per the money should go per the student. So keep that in mind. And so the varying numbers that you see. And that's all available on the DPI website. We try to muddle through that too. It's a huge website. If you go up to Washington Island, it's almost $30,000 a student because there's hardly any kids there, and everybody there is from Illinois, and they have really large homes, and so I mean it's based on a lot of things that honestly was meant to create some sort of equity. But that's right.
And that's the point, that it needs to be evaluated.
I gotta tell you though, whenever you have the conversation about changing the school funding, there will be winners and there will be losers. And people are fearful that they'll end up being a loser, so they don't necessarily want to make so I agree, it should be almost like it's tax policy. It should be easy, this much follows the kid, end of story. Then there's the, do you have special needs? Do you need an IEP? But it always becomes, leave it to the government to make things more complicated, right?
Right, I do believe, I don't think we've been allowing for inflation in our funding. And I know that there are many special needs students who actually require one-on-one aid to be with them throughout the whole day. So I just think that you can't ask the public schools to do everything and not give them the support that they need. And our birth rate, I think, in Wisconsin is dropping, right?
I think so.
The birth rate in Wisconsin.
Yeah, we have unfortunately.
The ECHO baby boomers,
Yep.
our population is smaller, so if it's based on population, that's going to hurt us as well. And that gets back to my point that we can't afford to be funding two separate school systems.
Just a question, does the choice take away that population? The choice schools, does that draw that out from the public school?
So how many, and I know we're almost at the end here, so
Sorry.
I want to do some of this, but how many, so I attended a public school, I went to John Marshall High School. And so did my husband, and I mean, I think public schools are great, right? But at the end of the day, if they're unable to do the job, and I've also been to schools that have like a 3% minimum standard of reading rates. How can I look at those parents and say, yeah, you have to go to that school?
But does it draw?
So as you're saying, we're funding two different, they're not funded the same, and they're all engaged in the same thing, and that is to make sure that the kids can read and write. And I do also want to know, for every student that goes to a choice school, there is a funding mechanism that difference of the money between what Menomonee Falls gets and what the choice gets goes into a funding pot. Craziness of the funding formula goes into a funding pot, and that money goes to all of the schools then. So they are paid for children they do not get. They pay for children that do not exist in their system. And so keep that in mind as you're saying, it is truly meant to be about as fair as it can be. And like I say, as a legislator, I have a hard time looking at some districts and saying, listen, your numbers are so small that these kids are not learning to read and write. And then we have the issues with them driving cars and being Kia boys and making poor choices. So we have to find some middle ground, and I hope that you'd be willing to work that way. So I will be respectful.
Can I just ask, the choice schools do not have to take the disabled. They are allowed to reject them. So if you want to give funding, then they have to apply to the same rules.
So-
It's not fair for them to be able to turn down kids.
First of all, do you have a slip?
No, but I'm saying you have to give the correct information. And
I
school
am-
choice is not on the same, they have a different set of rules than the public schools.
That I disagree with that, and we can have that conversation.
Oh.
If you want to make out a form.
Fine, and you will send me the information where choice has to take the same disabled kids as Milwaukee or Menomonee Falls. You have that information. I will fill out the slip, but I expect that information.
I think we can look at what the rules are. I am not saying
No, you said they do have to take
They
the
do
disabled.
they do take children that.
No, do they have to take every disabled child? That applies.
I guess the question is what is the disability? Because many of the families, they don't have the facilities to be able to make all those changes. I mean,
Either do Milwaukee Public Schools or Menomonee Falls Schools. So just so you're aware.
Well, I appreciate everybody's time, so
I'm sorry. She doesn't